And welcome everyone to the Blueberry Valley podcast. I'm your host, Dozer, and with me today is our community director of the Blueberry Valley, Sprody,
Hello.
and the founder and corrupt CEO of the Blueberry Valley Railroad, C.D. Trumpet.
Hello, hello.
And today we have a very special guest. You may know him as a music man, or you may know him as the community manager of Railroads Online. Please welcome Hyce.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
All right, how's everyone doing today? You're all doing good?
Living the
Doing
dream.
good.
Excellent.
Living the dream. I'm
Always.
I'm kind of wondering how one gets the title corrupt CEO.
One embezzles a lot of money.
Well, I see. Fair enough.
You did not see any derailments. If you didn't see them, they did not happen.
Not a crime
Hides under
unless you
manhole
bought.
cover.
The mole men strike again. All right, so let's get started here. And Heist, let's start with a bit of your musical background because we know you have done some great work on the Railroads Online soundtrack. And I just wanted to know, how long have you been a musician? What kind of got you started with it?
Well, first off, thank you. Appreciate the compliment about the soundtrack. I've been playing music for, Lord, objectively too long, it feels like these days. I started playing drums originally. It was one of those things where my grade school had band class that was required in fifth grade. You had to learn an instrument and attempt to do the thing. And my sister before me had played drums, and so we had a snare drum lying around the house. And it was like, well, hey, I guess I'll play drums and save some money for the family, and I'll do that. And halfway through my fifth grade year, so I was 10 or 11, so this is ancient history at this point. Halfway through that year, they had me join the honors jazz band. So I was playing jazz drums and trying to figure out what to do with more than just a snare drum, but kind of sitting behind a bass drum and like a couple cymbals, and you start to sit behind a drum kit and you get, oh no, I can see where this could go. This could turn into something kind of cool and maybe rock and roll. Is what I thought back then. So that was my start in music, and shoot, that's like almost 18 years ago now.
Right? Yeah. Do you have any influences? Like, who's your biggest influence in your music?
Oh, that's a good question. I grew up basically. I was born a dad, is my joke. I pretty much listened to the music that my dad did, which is primarily classic rock, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, some of that good stuff, and that's what kind of fueled my drumming when I was starting out. Was like, hey, Dad likes Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin's drummer sounds awesome. I mean, John Bonham's one of the best drummers of all time. And so playing drums like that, I mean, that really kickstarted my music career. And Led Zeppelin and those rock and roll bands, and then the bands that were blues and jazz that influenced them, later subsequently, influenced me. And that's where a lot of those influences come from. And I've been told by many a person that there's some very Zeppelin-sounding things in the soundtrack. So, I always appreciate the reference.
I think I can confirm that.
I must add on to that. You said that you liked a bit of AC/DC. Have you ever tried that on karaoke before?
Oh God! If you go to the depths of my YouTube channel, very very deep in the archives, there from maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there's a cover that I did of "You Shook My All Night Long," where I play all the instruments and I sing. It's not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. So it's there.
That is amazing.
I'm gonna check it out.
I know exactly what I'm doing tonight.
I can't tell you how many times I've tried to do AC/DC Back in Black on karaoke.
Brian Johnson is difficult. I can do the Bon Scott stuff a little better. The early AC/DC is a little
You gotta
easier,
do the other
but
stuff.
the Brian Johnson stuff. Oh! Yeah, that's. And if you've ever heard the guy talk like in an actual interview, he's got this weird, deep Scottish voice. He's Brian Johnson at AC/DC. And then he screams at me, and you're like, what the hell is this human? How can he do that? How has he done that? 40 years.
You do some amazing impressions there.
Well, thank you.
Oh boy, a lot of tea. I believe that's ACDC's secret. So I see in your YouTube videos that you mentioned earlier, when you record soundtracks or give examples of soundtrack recordings, I see a lot of instruments in your background. Out of every single one of those instruments, do you have a favorite?
Do you have a favorite child? I mean, it's
I work as a teacher and I do so.
oh well, fair enough. I was thinking more in as the vibe of being a parent, right? I'm very fortunate that I've got several wonderful instruments. I do have kind of a number one, but I don't know. It's not like it's so hard to be like this is the absolute favorite because they're all just different flavors of really good and really fun to work with and different sounds that you can get out of them. Because at the end of the day, they're all kind of tools to really express yourself as a musician and then get that sound out of it. So each guitar I play and each kind of music will make me kind of I don't know, it grabs something different out of me. I perform differently on each one, whether it's a Strat or an SG or the Dobro or whatever, right? But my number one is that blue SG that I've got. It's a 2005 Gibson SG Supreme, which means that it's got 24 frets and it's extra special. But I saw those and I always wanted to get one, and the right one popped up at the right time for super cheap comparatively to what they normally are. So I was happy to get it, and it just rips. It's the fastest playing guitar I've got, so I love that thing.
Amazing. So other than very great AC/DC covers, are there any other musical projects that you're a part of other than Railroads Online?
Yes, I was just at rehearsal last night. I play in a kick-ass hard rock band in Seattle here. We're called Hellbot, and if you wanted stuff that is, I don't know, it's people always ask like, what kind of music do you play? And it's like, well, we're kind of hard rock, but it's not that. Like, I can't pin one band down because our rhythm section's kind of vaguely Van Halen, but I like the old school rock and roll stuff. I like Angus, I like Jimmy Page, and I like being more melodic with some things. And our singer is just like this total powerhouse, but he's the son of a singer from a like regionally famous band called Second Coming, and he sounds just like his dad. And his dad was palling around with all the Seattle grunge guys back in the day. So it's like he's got the Seattle grunge thing, but he's such a powerhouse. But he also likes the Doors and Van Morrison. So it's like it's kind of all over the place. So you just kind of have to give us a listen. Our first LP released a couple months ago, self-titled album Hellbot. It's on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube, the whole nine yards. Look for the demonic skull and don't let it auto-correct you to Hellboy. It's Hellbot. We realized that was an issue after we picked the name and uploaded everything, so oh well.
It's hard to pick a band name these days. Trust me, I've tried. Just like what hasn't been a thing that was like an obscure band in the 60s that had one-hit records, so we can't use this band name, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, band names are like the hardest thing. Like you can try and come up with something and then it's just impossible to pick. And I mean, we argued over it for months, but finally we settled on Hellbot. And at the end of the day, for me, it was like, I guess the band name doesn't matter so much. It just, people will listen to the music, and if they like the music, they'll like the band. Like, think about the band name The Beatles. Oh, hey, you know what we'll do? We'll change one of the E's in Beetle to an O so it's a beat. Oh, like it's musical, yeah. So, I mean, what a stupid name, right? But people love the Beatles. So,
we have a guy that does a really good Ringo impersonation listening, and he's probably crying right now.
Probably.
I mean, honestly,
my British accent is not very good, so.
yeah,
Mine isn't either.
Ringo the Music Man, he came in, he made it into the lore of the Blueberry Valley Railroad just because of the Ringo impressions. He comes in and he's like, oh, it was another sunny day on the Blueberry Valley Railway. And it's like just, it
That's
made me
brilliant.
crack up so much.
That's hilarious.
Oh, he's raising his hand. I think he wants to demonstrate for us.
Put me in, Coach. Let's hear from Ringo.
All right, let's actually hear from Ringo here. Let's get him in here. You got to accept it, Ringo, or else we're not going to let you on.
You must accept.
All right, Ringo, you're on the air. Give us what you got.
He's muted.
I heard you were talking to Ringo.
He's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
Yeah.
It was another sunny day on the Blueberry Valley Railway.
That's great. I love it.
All right. Thank you, Ringo.
Thank you for being a demonstration of yourself. This was good.
Yes,
I've heard it all.
we heard it all. So you're part of this great band now. You got your was it LP out? EP? LP?
LP, yes.
LP.
For EP is extended play and LP is long play.
Long play,
What does that mean? Yeah, no, it's 11 tracks, 30 or 40 minutes, something like that. So yeah, it's a full album, as it were.
Full album at 33 and a third revolutions per minute.
Indeed.
So you're part of this band? You play gigs with your band?
We do, yeah. Obviously, with COVID, it's been strange, but we've managed to get a couple out there, and our live shows are an absolute ton of fun. There is plenty of beer that goes around, and I've watched our singer Tristan smack the microphones into his forehead several times over, hard enough to cut his forehead open on more than one occasion. And I've flopped on the floor and spun around in circles with my guitar several times. Yeah,
Rock and
it's always a
roll.
good time. It's a little rock and roll. We throw down and it's really loud, and yeah, it's just fun and energetic. People listen to the music and they're like, "Oh yeah, the music sounds good." And then they come see us live and they go, "What the hell just happened?"
I hope
It's,
there's footage of those stunts.
There's some amount of live footage that people have posted on the internet. You can find some of it on YouTube, but I don't know. It's fun for me because it's like it is a different person when Hyce is on stage and you get the amplifiers up loud enough, and I've got a guitar in hand, and it's just like the caveman comes out, different human comes out, and rock and roll things happen, and I'm not in control anymore. It's very fun.
That is totally a thing. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like once you're just up on stage, it's just like, nothing matters but the show. It's just like this adrenaline rush that's like kind of hard to describe.
Yeah, absolutely. Our next gigs, we're playing, June 4th at the Red Dog Saloon in Maple Valley, Washington, if anyone's Washingtonian. And then in July 8th, we are headlining Friday night of Shed Fest, which is a local festival put on up in Stanwood, Washington. So if you're in the greater Seattle area, you could come watch me destroy a guitar on stage.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna move on from your musical stuff in real life and move to your work with Railroads Online.
All right.
When did you first become part of the team? When did you
shoot.
start?
It's kind of hard to pinpoint an exact time because it was kind of a gray area thing before it became a defined thing, I guess, because it was I just started making tunes and then people were listening to them and improving them, and then it didn't get to QMA until later. So it was like, I don't know, vaguely 2 years ago-ish, somewhere later in 2019, because it was, or maybe 2020. Oh God, it's 2020. It's 2 years ago now. Yeah, somewhere vaguely early-ish 2020. So that was kind of when things started going on. People were talking about how they didn't like the soundtrack that was in the game, and it was like 10 minutes long, in American Railroad, Summit River, and Pine Valley. And so it was like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Like, a soundtrack couldn't be that hard to do. And people were bringing up old Railroad Tycoon soundtrack clips and like, oh yeah, why can't we have music like this? And it was like, okay, that's not that hard. Like, I don't see what the deal is. And I recorded a quick 2-minute demo. In about 10 minutes, I did 2 guitar tracks and a bass track in 10 minutes, 2-minute long songs. So it was like boom, track, boom, track, boom, track, rough mix, print. And then I pasted it in the Discord, and people were like, oh yeah, no, you should do the soundtrack. You want to do the soundtrack? And little did I know that was just a lower level, developer who it wasn't even like a dev team yet. It was just QMA and one other individual, and he approved of the soundtrack and said that I should do the whole soundtrack. And only later did I find out that QMA didn't know for like the first 3 or 4 months, and I produced like 10 or 15 songs, and then they all got sent off to QMA at once. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, please continue doing that." So that was all kind of towards late 2020 into 2021.
Wow. Yeah, that's the higher ups didn't even. That is wow.
Yeah, bit of an adventure. Yeah, it was the thing of like, oh yeah, no, you should do the soundtrack. It'll be great. And then had no idea that QMA hadn't heard it or anything or approved it, or there was a chance that it wouldn't get put in the game at all. But he heard it and he was, oh yeah, no, it sounds good, and okay, yeah, we'll put it in the game. Here, can you have the whole thing done by June? June 2021. It's like, well, that's not going to be enough of a soundtrack, but I can get as much as I can done. So that's why we ended up with the 28 songs that are in game. Ran out of time. So that's why we're also working on volume number 2. So we'll, hopefully add about another 20, 30 songs into the game to really make it a longer playthrough. Because I think as it sits, we've got a little bit over 2 hours of music in the game. And Railroads Online is very much one of those games where you can play for like 4 or 5 hours in an evening with your friends.
I've
and
played
listening to
11
Chattanooga
hours.
Choo Choo. Yeah, right.
It's
Listening
easy to do that.
Listening to Chattanooga Choo Choo for the 15th time does get old. So
I don't know about you, but I love that song.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing about the music that's in this game is the way it's done is there's things you pick up that you don't hear the first time. And, like, I'm always tuned in to, like, musical stuff. Like, I'm listening to, like, the middle guitar part, and, like, I'm the stuff like that. So I'm never bored with it, which is like, so good. Like, I don't know, like, how somebody makes a song that I've probably listened to each song over 100 times now, and I'm always like, yes, Chattanooga Choo Choo, Camptown Races, let's go, And
Classic.
when the game first came out, I just want to say I heard that cover of Camptown Races, and I said multiple times, this is the best cover of Camptown Races I've ever heard. And like,
good.
It's just so like, especially the ending. I love the ending of that one.
I can back that comment up. That it is definitely one of the best, if not the best one I've heard.
Oh, good. I'm glad you guys like it. It had to be included because it's a little bit of an inside joke with myself and my friends at the Colorado Railroad Museum. We're all big fans of Mel Brooks and the film Blazing Saddles. And if you're unfamiliar, there's an early scene early on where they're talking to the guys building the track and talking about work songs and stuff. And Camptown Races is the one that they make fun of, and then all the track foremen are running around in their cowboy outfits doing stupid
Yep.
dances to the Camptown Races. And I can neither confirm nor deny that there's been a time while we're going down the railroad, 3 of us in the cab, and we're all doing the stupid Camptown Races dance while operating the steam locomotive. I can neither confirm nor deny that that's happened.
That's awesome.
So I knew that it had to be in the soundtrack because it was just going to be a thing that was going to make the guys giggle. So I found, it's an easy song, really simple song, and it was like, okay, well, we'll figure out a couple instruments to play for it and just toss it together and see how it goes. So
Yes, that is quite the song. So you're transitioned kind of into a new role recently. I just got to ask, how's life as the community manager of Railroads Online?
I need a second plate because my plates are a little full. It's blurst, I suppose, is what the kids say these days. It's a blessing and a curse, and a lot of people commented that when we announced it. It was like, congratulations on the death sentence, rather than congratulations on the promotion, because I mean it's an incredible amount of work. But I think it's been good, and when the way it happened was really funny. But when they were trying to figure out who it was going to be, when Armagon said that he didn't want to do it anymore, it was like I couldn't think of anyone else that could do it. Really, I mean, I'm sure somebody could step up and do a good job, but I mean, it felt like it would have made sense for me to do it, kind of be in the public voice already a little bit with the stuff that I do on YouTube. So I mean, it just felt like the right fit. And yes, it adds a lot more to the plate and adds a lot more responsibility. And managing the Discord's obviously a challenge of 17,000 people, and trying to do it the right way and trying to do it in a professional way that we're not making any cuts or making any quick judgments or just approving people to be moderators just based on the fact that we know them just to get things done quickly. We're trying to do everything the right way, and yeah, it adds a lot of work, but I think it's important, and I love the community, so I think it's work that's worthy of doing, and I'm happy to do it. So,
Is it more work than you expected it to be?
Yes and no. I mean, for me, partially it was like, well, they explained what the roles and responsibilities were, and I was like, well, I do all of that already. Like, I already spent a lot of time looking at the Discord and moderating and stuff. I think the stuff that I didn't anticipate that was a lot of work was getting the Discord reset up, and then coming up with like moderator guidelines and the first time setup stuff that we really hadn't done before. Pulling that out of thin air and then referencing and working with the guys on making that happen. That was a little bit more work than I expected, but otherwise, I mean, it's kind of what I was expecting overall, I guess. I knew it was going to be a bit of a time sink, so yeah.
Speaking from personal experience, I can say it does. Well, for me, it turned into like a second job. It was, yeah. So huge respect for you with taking that on, as well as everything else you're doing and the YouTube as well.
I don't have enough things to do, so gotta add some more.
Someone's gonna keep you occupied.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, how many people are in that Discord now? It's like it's over like 5,000 now, right? Like
17,290 last I checked, so casual.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah. Now you can see why we're trying to get more moderation going, and we're trying to do it the right way. So I mean, it takes a long time. It took us a little bit to figure out moderator guidelines, get everyone agreed on it, make sure that it was the right list and at the right level, and then getting the right people in place. Like Trumpet right here in this call is one of our junior moderators. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much.
And we just got him promoted up a couple days ago, and we've been looking through the applications. We've got like something like 200 plus join the team applications.
Oh, wow.
So it's just so much to go through, and we're going to respond to everyone at some point, but we definitely went through and went through a quick list of like, okay, try and find some people that could probably serve as good moderators right away, just to get some more bodies on the ground, more boots on the ground as far as moderation goes, so that we have round the clock coverage, and maybe we can start to bring some channels back so that it feels more like it did before. And just making that happen, I mean, it's challenging because, I mean, there's so much drive to be like, we need more butts and seats. We need more moderators right here, right now. There's a desire to just be like, no, okay, I've talked with Trumpet like 5 or 6 times. He's a really nice guy. Let's just give him the thing. And it's like, no, we can't do that. We need to have a process. We need to understand and have a mutual understanding, have a discussion about it, get a dialogue going, and make sure that we're doing everything the right way. So we're not skipping steps. We're not trying to, pull a fast one or just picking, people that cherry pick people that we think will be good. We're really trying to make sure that we're getting the right people and doing the process the right way to make sure that moderation's done and the server can continue to go. Because, I mean, I think that's the only way you can do that when you have 17,000 people. The community's just too big.
100%. When in my last server, we had something like 150 staff, and it was just previously they hadn't been handpicked like you are doing now, and it doesn't work unless you do it. You take your time to do it and you do it properly, and yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing.
Yeah, so it's tough. It takes a long time. So I appreciate everyone's patience as they bear with us. It's bare bones only having the 4 channels for now, but that's what we can moderate and handle right now. And we're gonna get more people rolled into the folds through and through. We've got some more interviews we're lining up this week. We've got 3 junior mods so far, and we're hoping to get a significant more amount of folks involved. And then, start getting more channels involved in the Discord. Bring back the Real Railroad chat, the Real Railroad pictures. Find a better way to do bug reports. Obviously, that's on the list. And it will be more pertinent after the Spline update beta comes out. and maybe get some of the other stuff about talking other simulators or other games or model railroading. If we get enough people in the fold, I'd love to see that stuff come back, because it's all about being a community talking about trains and railroads online. Because obviously we're here to talk the game, answer questions, and learn about the game. But we're all train fans at the end of the day. That's why we're here. So we want to celebrate the other pieces of it too. So it's going to be exciting to be able to get all those channels back and really make the community feel like a community. So.
Right. You mentioned that you had like 200 or so applications become members of the team. Is that all moderator roles, or is that like also modelers as well? Because the
It's
modeling team has been doing great recently.
Oh
yes,
yeah,
yes, they have been.
Ooh.
incredible.
Goodness gracious. We'll let me answer the question, and then we can shout out those folks. The ratio is something like 50% of those applications are about moderation or the modeling team, and then the other 50% are kind of all over the place. Some people suggesting other things as far as like ticket tracking and software, giving their other experience, or wanting to be a part of the dev team or product management. I mean, all kinds of people across the board, and a lot of people asking to join the soundtrack too. So there's a lot of stuff that we need to sift through, and it's going to take a lot of time, and we're going to be a bit picky about it, because at the end of the day, we don't have that much admin to manage a massive team, and we need to really get QMA's buy-in on that if we're going to do that. So we're just going to have to see how some of that works out as we sift through that, and that's just going to be the name of the game for now. But it's kind of wonderful and heartwarming to see all these applications. Anyway, it's really cool. That so many people want to be involved in it. But yeah, back to the modelers. Holy crap. I mean, I've never seen people model stuff that fast. We got Daniel and Glock into the folds, after events that we shall not speak of. And goodness, they are A, fantastic quality, and B, I don't know how they model so fast. I mean, they've just done it long enough that they have all the muscle memory and the hotkeys, I guess, because they just blitz through it. I mean, it's like we went from nothing to a completed 060 ready to dump in the game in like 4 days. And I mean, that's just ridiculous. So huge shout out to Daniel and Glock specifically for the late crazy progress, but of course to the whole modeling team for everything that they do. I mean, that's the exciting bit, is seeing new locomotives and new rolling stock, because that's really the glamorous part of the game, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. So working with this project of Railroads Online, what is the best thing you've learned about trains since joining the team?
Oh Lord, the amount of I think the best thing I've learned is how much I don't know. I think I don't know if I could pinpoint a single thing beyond that. Because my whole thing about trains and how I came into the fold was, I loved trains since I was a kid. My granddad got me into him. He was all into model trains, had a Lionel train set, all that fun when I was younger. And I always just loved steam locomotives and seeing the mechanical, nature of them. So I ended up going to get a mechanical engineering degree, and I went to college down the road from the Colorado Railroad Museum, so I got involved there, and then that's kind of how I spiraled into that. But I've always been on the mechanical engineer side of locomotives, and that, so I'd like to understand how they operate, what's the physics behind them, how you operate the locomotive, how the locomotive physically and mechanically works. So that's where I come from, and I've learned some of the history along the way. But being around this team of people who are so deeply into the history and have done so much deep research that is not like, oh, I looked stuff up on the internet and found it, but these are people that are diving into records and stuff that hasn't been scanned, or stuff that has been scanned but isn't searchable, going to universities and going to libraries to pull all this information out. And, people like Armagon that could tell you about the Baldwin styles and the line work and the fonts and how all this stuff works. And some of our researchers and helpers for the game who know all this stuff just like the back of their hand, how much history they have, and how much knowledge for that history that they have just ready to go. I mean, it just proved to me that I know nothing about railroad history. And it's so cool to learn all of these new little tidbits, just about anything about the railroad that, that these guys found and researched. It's just brilliant.
I mean, if I may
Right.
say something that I learned because of this game, I did not know that a double fairly ever ran in the U.S.
Neither
That
did
was a
I, and it still makes me mad.
Oh yeah, on the BVRR we've built a little jail for it. It's surrounded by water towers. It's like a little engine shed. No, it's more of a joke. I mean, we're gonna run them, of course, but that's just more for the memes, right?
I love it.
Is there a favorite model that you're looking forward to?
Oh Lord, um, this is always a great question, and it's tough for me to really answer because um, there's so many good ones, and then there's so many that I want to have in the game too, for personal reasons. Obviously, I live in Seattle these days. I don't live in Golden Denver anymore, so I don't get to play with my choo-choos or see my choo-choos that often anymore. I only get out there a couple times a year. So I really want to have like the K37 so I can have 491 on my PC, or the C19 so I could have 346, or the T19 so I could have 20. The three kids that I know that have operated, it'd be great to be able to get up in the cab from the comfort of my basement as opposed to having to get on a plane. But beyond those three, I think it's going to be really brilliant to bring the UN O'Malley's back from the dead. And those are just bonkers, stupid, crazy locomotives. So that'll be cool to see what they can do. And then, of course, little spoiler for version 6 of the locomotive tech tree, which we will be filming a video about later today. Wink, wink. I can confirm that we have a proposed 2882 that was never built, that has 101,000 pounds of tractive effort, 3-foot gauge. That's going to be on the tree, and I'm very excited to see that.
You know, what's very funny? In the draft questions we had for this, I wanted to ask, can you explain what the L101 is? Just
Well, that is
tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, that's it.
that
right?
that is that is the L101. So
Yeah.
the whole thing, what the L101 is that is Armagon's calculations for the proposed locomotive. The actual tractive effort rating that they stuck on the folio sheet was not correct based on the dimensions that they gave. Shocker, because railroaders back in the day and railroad engineers did all their math while consuming whiskey, as far as I can tell, because any math I've ever tried to back out of the railroads did not make a lick of sense. Anyway, shocker. They were proposed 2882 Malley steam locomotives. I guess they're simple articulateds rather than Malleys, but that the Rio Grande and the Rio Grande Southern looked at getting, and they requested proposals from Alco and Baldwin. And so it's a fictional locomotive that never existed, but they were talking, okay, well, we made a K37 out of some of the bits from the C41. What if we took two C41s and took some of the running gear, and what if we hashed that into a narrow gauge 2882 somehow? What would that look like? And so Baldwin went, well, you're hammered, but I guess it would look maybe something like this. Sure, have a napkin with a drawing of a locomotive on it. And so it had, stats for like the heating surface and size of the firebox and the overall geometry and spacing and an elevation profile of what the locomotive would look like. And so based on that and what the standard gauge Rio Grande articulateds look like, and then what, how the narrow gauge ones came out, we can kind of figure out, okay, we can reasonably build what this thing would have looked like had the railroad made it. And so it's kind of an alternate future, alternate history of the railroad, which will be really cool to have, I think.
Oh, I absolutely love stuff like that. I eat it up. It's like, I don't know if you've heard of the Berliner work, where this guy just draws like these ridiculous like fictional steam locomotives, like but even like in real life, that stuff is really cool. My question just about this particular engine, were they going to make it outside frame like the K27s and like all of those, or was it just going to kind of be your standard setup?
The only way I could think that they could make that much tractive effort and make enough steam to support it would be with an outside frame design. They don't show that in their elevation drawing of the locomotive, but that's the only way that it would make sense. I mean, because the whole purpose of doing outside frame is that you can move the frame rails to the outside of the wheels, teehee, But by having the wheels inside and then the frame outside, the frame is kind of your constraint factor height-wise before you hit the boiler, because you have to have the spring rigging and rods and everything on the outside, right? So you can sink a bigger boiler down on an outside frame than you can on an inside frame, and you have a more stable product in a smaller footprint when you do that. So the only way to get the massive boiler, with the K37 sunk down onto a frame like that was to have the outside frame. So if you're talking about something the size of the L101 that's got massive cylinders to power, you're going to need a big boiler, you're going to need a lot of heating surface and a big firebox. And the only way you're going to do that without making something that just doesn't fit a narrow gauge profile is doing it outside frame.
So what I'm hearing is this thing is going to be a chonker.
Yeah, well,
Serious.
all the outside frame engines are. It's even the K27 and the K28 are still about 10.5 feet wide. So they're all standard gauge width at the end of the day. All the big Rio Grande power, they're just shorter in height. I know that the 491 and the K37s are 10 foot 8 inches wide at the cylinders, and their tender steps are the widest thing at 11 feet wide, tip to tip on the step. So that is proper standard gauge width already right there. So, I mean, you're going to have what looks like a squat, fat version of the L131 or L132, which are the Rio Grande massive articulated locomotives. Just picture that like 3/4 as tall, and on an outside frame, it's going to be a huge thing. It's going to be cool.
I'm
It
so
sounds
excited.
like a real big boy, if I say so myself.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Big boy when?
Never.
Kicks Brody from the collies out.
I'm not sure if any of you guys are in my Discord server, but in my Discord server, I have Carl Bot, thanks to Mikali, who's also the head admin of the, or not the head moderator of the Railroads Online Discord. Shout out to Mikali. He's very helpful on the admin side of Discord. He set up Carlbot to say no big boy. Anytime anyone says big boy or tries to game it with like different like numbers or words that says big boy or uses one of the road numbers, I mean, so no big boy. Yeah, in honor of Carl, no big boy.
We also have that command in here as well.
As well you
Inspired by
should.
you. Yeah. I mean, I just think, never mind, I just lost my train of thought, no pun intended. Anyway.
Oh, no. All right, so we learned today that you didn't know as much as you thought you knew about trains. What would you recommend a good starting point is for someone who's learning about trains?
Oh Lord, there's really no substitute for getting out there and really doing it. I think if you really want to learn railroad and really want to learn the history, if you've got a museum or a tourist railroad or something along those lines that you can volunteer at, that's the way to properly do it. You will meet so many people who know so much that you can learn from. Just be a fly on the wall and listen to what they have to say. That's where you're going to learn a bunch. Other than that, I mean, get involved, join us on the Discord, ask questions. People are happy to share. And there's lots of great resources out there along that vein. So those are the places to learn. I also do a little 101 series on my YouTube where I chat vaguely about how things work at a pretty basic level, but there's a lot of information that a lot of people either don't have quite right in the railfan community, or they just don't know that I'm trying to kind of pull back the curtain on as someone who's in the railroad industry. So also a good place to go. Shout out, self-promo, a little bit of self-shill. Sorry about that, but
We encourage the self-promo. We're really just grateful to have you on here.
We'd be disappointed if you didn't.
Pretty much. So let's move on. Let's look into the future a bit. More so the future of Railroads Online. I saw a very disappointing message that the first beta branch update of the Spline update will not be out on time. So a bit sad about that. But is there a new rough timeline of when it will be out?
I am still waiting for a response from the boss man on that one. I've got a message out to QMA with the latest set of Q&A questions for this weekend, hopefully. And I've also asked when he's kind of thinking when the beta is going to come down, but he kind of tends to be here and there logging in on Discord, as it were, because he works way too much. He puts way too much time in, and I know how distracted I get when I get Discord pings, and I know he gets a bunch too. So he tends to be kind of do not disturb, and when he's got a moment that he can come in and take a look and see what he's got, that's when he pops in. So we were originally hoping for late last week as the first construction tools beta. I've reached out to see if he thinks maybe this week, because he was down to the point of cleaning up the code and fixing the last couple minor things. So I've got my fingers crossed, but I don't know yet. If we don't see it by sometime Friday, it'll be probably sometime next week.
Right. Is there a rough progression of what's going to be released in the beta branch in terms of the Spline update?
Yeah, so the first beta is going to be a test of the construction tools for the new splines, because as we've talked about in the Q&A videos, rather than primarily laying groundwork and then rails over the top, you're going to be able to lay a combined rail and groundwork spline, and as well a combined bridge deck and bridge spline. And with the new tools, being able to lay segments that are up to 500 meters long, as opposed to our current 10-meter limit on rails, things are going to be considerably different, and there's a lot of different controls. I mean, previously, you would drag to the length you wanted and click, and that's what you'd get, and you could lock the curvature if you wanted to, and then you just had to follow whatever grade you'd already set. But now you're going to have controls to set the length of the segment, to set the curvature of the segment, and to set the gradient of the segment per segment within the spline, so between control points. And that's going to be, that's a huge change, and we need to make sure that works, and we need to make sure that locking into circles works, because you're going to be able to have perfectly circular curves and lock the track to that. So there's going to be a lot with that new construction style that's going to be very different than what we have right now, and we need to make sure that everyone's good with it and understands how to use it, and that it's user friendly. What makes sense to QMA or what makes sense to me may not make sense for 99% of the Railroad Zeltline user base. So that's why we're going to be doing the public beta of the construction tools. But we'll have the construction tools to test all that out, and to test procedural tie and bridge support placement. Because the ties will place randomly via a procedural method with slight differences in spacing and rotation to look like genuine narrow gauge track, and it won't look like repetitive, oh yeah, same spline, same spline, same spline. And the same thing with bridge supports. The supports will also automatically set the right height and spacing over the terrain that you go over, and with certain different combinations of track and terrain and geometry, we imagine there will be some issues that we'll run into, because procedural things, they always tend to have some funky edge cases. So we're hoping that the beta will help catch that stuff. So the first beta is going to have all that, plus a test train. You'll be able to run Betsy pulling some flat cars, basically, along the new splines, and try that out. But you won't be able to load cargo or anything, because we still have a ways to go on the implementation piece as far as getting the rest of the locomotives and cars ported over to the new spline system. Because in addition to all the construction tools I just talked about, the rail-to-train interaction is also different in this update. So rather than literally physically simulating the contact points between wheels and rails and literally dynamically trying to calculate that, we're going down to the point of the train's pretty much locked on the track, on the spline at the right height, and then if it goes over speed or over a force threshold, then it'll derail, rather than literal physics calculations happening real time to determine derailments and what the train is doing, which was, ridiculously intensive. You realize you get 50 cars times at least 4 interaction points, plus locomotives, client-side multiplayer versus host-side multiplayer. Oh, we're doing 6 billion thousand calculations, and you wonder why stuff jumps all over the place on the client side.
And then you become the Blueberry Valley Railroad.
And then you become
4 engines, 280 cars. Let's go.
Then you get the popcorn railroad. Yeah. So we haven't tested that many locomotives and cars, obviously. On the test branch, we've only tested 1 locomotive and about 25 cars, but we've tested it going 200 kilometers an hour, and it is butter smooth. client or host, and speed also factors into those calcs. So we're pretty confident that it is going to significantly reduce the popcorning problem, if not remove it entirely for most individuals. So that was a crap ton of information. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at for the first Spline beta.
That's awesome. Just another question on terms of people that are currently running on the current beta branch. What will happen to their save games? Do we know?
So we won't know until we get the first test of it, really, right? There's always the chance that something goes bizarre in Codeland because, video game engines are an interesting beast sometimes. But what we've seen so far in the dev branches is that your save and your old track with the old Spline style is all there, and you can still run trains on that, but the new splines and the new trains can't interact with it. So we're assuming that your saves will remain the same, but you won't be able to use the current tracks or trains you have, at least interfacing with the new spline laying techniques. So basically what we're recommending is, just in case, back up your saves before we get the beta branch. It's always a good idea to back up your saves anyways, by the way. But back your saves up, and if you want to try out the beta, try it out, and just know that you're going to have construction tools, and you won't really be running trains, but your saves shouldn't be affected. They should be okay. You should be able to flip-flop back and forth, but, we're not 100% sure. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to move freight with the new system anyways, so I would say just load a blank save yourself the FPS, and try it out with a blank save, and then, don't save it or save it in a new slot, and that way you don't load any of your old saves anyway. But it remains to be seen.
I actually have a question. Is there at some point going to be some sort of testing for let's say you have a railroad like the Blueberry that has just a ridiculous amount of rolling stock, more than you probably would need, but will there be tests for a railroad like that where you just spawn in a bunch of cars and locomotives just to see what would happen? Because I know
Absolutely, yeah.
We might be the first, but we won't be the last,
Very, very true. We certainly do a lot of local testing to make sure that everything, will handle the capacity that people are pushing the game to locally before we push things. So that will be done, of course. And then once we have the ability to spawn stuff, we're going to go on the dev branch and try and dump as many locomotives and cars as we can into the thing and see what happens. So, we want to make sure that we have an understanding of what the threshold is, because, before, we tested, even our dev server, we had maybe 30 cars and 5 locomotives, and the game ran pretty good because it was 30 cars and 5 locomotives, and we found out the limit was about 50-ish cars depending on your PC. Your results may vary. So we never got to test much more than that back in the day before we launched the game. And so, we've learned, and it's okay, well, let's try and find where the edge of the envelope is, and give a hard recommendation, or maybe put a cap on the amount of rolling stock if people are going to really suffer from performance issues. But we're really hoping that, a couple hundred cars, dozens of locomotives should be possible.
Awesome.
All right. So we have a great base now for Railroads Online. Where do you see this game going in the next year, 5 years, heck, even 10 years if we're still around?
Well, it may be hard to say 10 years, but, kind of the vision for the next year or so is pretty clear. Right now, Armagon and I have been working out, kind of polishing up the roadmap. We've had a roadmap document for a long time, but, it was never really set up to be public. So we're working on getting the roadmap published so everyone can see, what I'm about to tell you, basically. So that'll help with visibility and everything. And that was my primary goal once I got community manager was, hey, we need to publish the roadmap and make it so everyone sees what our vision is. And so they're not just wondering, hey, what's coming next? So in the near future, we're going to work on finishing the Spline update. And getting it rolled out to the main branch so that all the trains focus on that and everything is back implemented, and we have all the trains and cars that we had before in the game again. And, you're able to run your railroad just as you would. And then we're going to be I'm assuming we're going to have probably a good month of bug fix patches and all that, because I'm sure we're going to run into some silliness with the new system, just because it's really practically an entire game overhaul. But beyond that, we want to work on the proper simulation of, the actual locomotives themselves, because right now the reverser Johnson bar doesn't really do anything. So we want to get actual proper expansive working and get that piece, the steaming efficiency pieces, actually sorted out, and then get, firing implemented properly. And then, of course, have it on a difficulty scale so that if for single players or folks that don't want to have to deal with firing a wood burner for real, you can actually just enjoy the game as is. Or if you want to be playing the guy that has to huck 50 chunks of wood in every minute, you'll have that too. So if you want to have actual engine crews with engineer firemen, you'll need it if you want to set it to the realistic setting down the road. So we want to work towards that. We want to work towards updating loading right now, because obviously anyone who's loaded a boxcar with tools has wanted to rip their hair out, and we recognize that. So we're going to be looking into proper upgrades for the cranes, either upgrading multiples or being able to stack the amount of commands you give the crane. So you click 16 times, it loads 16 boxes, and you go do something else. Or it loads, 2 or 4 or 5, 6, however many commodities at a time, and you pay to upgrade the crane, and it'll do that kind of thing. That's the very near future stuff and QOL stuff. But down the road later this year, we're hoping to have a new map. The concept of the map has been posted out, based loosely on California area with diverse regions of, a couple towns by the ports, up to the high deserts with a significant amount of elevation change in between. And we're hoping to be able to get 16 by 16 kilometers as the size. The current map is 4 by 4, so this would be 16 times the area. Which is what we're really hoping for, because when Eureka is able to do 40 miles an hour, you're going to want a little bit more room to stretch your legs. So hopefully we'll see that within another year as well. We're also, I can give a really exciting, fun little leak here. We've figured out a way to make tunnels work in the game. So,
Yes.
we're hoping that will be kind of somewhere in the next year time frame. It's a little challenging to actually implement, but we've actually gotten it to work where you can place a tunnel portal and cull the landscape and collision in real time. But obviously, the making sure players don't fall through the map and that things make sense when you go through the tunnel is quite a bit of an endeavor. And then getting that to work in multiplayer and sync up and be nice and figure out ways to place it that don't involve you running and climbing over mountains. Yeah, a lot of little things to figure out there, but hopefully that'll be somewhere in there. And then as well, I think the last big thing for next year time frame is hopefully the fast travel via telegraph. So you'll place either wayside phone booths or telegraph offices or your depots, and you'll connect them with telegraph wire, and anything in your telegraph network you can then fast travel to, like you press the respawn button. So rather than, I just loaded into the Blueberry Valley Railroad, and last time we saved, I was at the iron mine, and all the trains are now gone. But I need to go, my job says I have to start at the coal mine. Rather than hoof it over the mountains, it's connected to the telegraph network. Boom, I pick the coal mine depot. I teleport right there. Bang, get on my train and go. But that way you still have to build. You still have to explore and clear the right-of-way and build the railroad as you want and expand the network. And then make the, deal with the cost associated with putting down the telegraph and all that, so that you can then get a new location. But, so you'll have a little bit of a flavor of the current game where, okay, we got to run there and then run back and, leave the train somewhere good. But eventually you will be able to then run the telegraph wires separately and then teleport there back and forth so that your core network is easier to be, accessed by anyone on the railroad.
Right.
So money is really going to play a big part in the near future then, by the sounds of it.
That's the hope. I think we'd start with the telegraph and the telegraph offices just to make it a reward, right? Because it's a huge quality of life thing, but at the same time, you don't want to just freely hand out teleport to every single industry.
Yeah.
So that will come, and I mean, obviously, we're gonna make it so you have to pay for tracks at some point too. I don't know if that'll be within the next year, because that's going to be a bit of a dynamic thing to figure out, like, how much does track cost? How much does bridge track cost? How much does it cost per height? What does all that look like? So we've got some vague ideas, but it's going to need a whole economic overhaul to achieve that, and flesh out the company system, and be able to take loans more like Railroad Tycoon 3. Stuff like that is going to have to get more advanced to get there. So that's probably a little further off. We'll just have to see on that piece. But yeah, money is really going to actually be important at some point. But I know for people that get anxiety over that, by the time that comes, we will also have a mode where money's not a problem. Creator mode, have fun mode, spawn all the trains you want, build all you want. Who cares? So, different things for different players.
So you mentioned a loan system like Railroad Tycoon 3. Is there any other games that you've drawn inspiration from in terms of helping develop the game?
Oh, certainly. I mean, we all grew up playing games like Railroad Tycoon 2, Railroad Tycoon 3, Sid Meier's Railroads, games like Transport Fever and their equivalents, Open TTD back in the day, or TTD, I guess, just as it was. It wasn't Open TTD yet, but so we all played those and enjoyed those, and we're trying to find a way to be the best first-person sim where you can also build the railroad. You have to operate the railroad, but there's also the economic management side of it as well. And finding that balance is certainly interesting because no one's really done exactly that. Which I think that's what's fun about this game, and that's why it feels like there's a progression, because you don't click 2 points on the map and bang, you've connected 2 towns. You have to go lay the track, and you have to pick your alignment, and and why based on the grade, the distance, the curvature, everything, and then you got to run the trains over it. It's not just, the train runs automatically, okay, I got to do it. So it makes, it puts more stakes to the management side, but at the same time, it also gives more of a reward to the simulation side. My frustration with train simulators for the longest time, for most of them, is, you've got a barely detailed route, and you've got to run this train, down this route for, 2 hours to get to the destination. Maybe you have a station stop or a stop for water or something along the way. And the sim is like okay-ish on what it is for the real locomotive. But a lot of times, okay, for the next 15 miles, I got a 2% grade. I set my Johnson bar, I set my throttle, and I'm staring at 2D carded scenery trees, and that's the only scenery that there is. And I'm going to be doing this for the next 30 minutes. I'm bored. Where's the reward? Okay, good job. You didn't bang the cars around. That doesn't do it for me. But I need to go and drop off this amount of cargo so that I can make more money, so that I can build, buy the next locomotive, get the next thing, get the next little check mark, expand the railroad. The railroad must grow, if you're a Factorio fan. Stuff like that. I think that we've got a really good balance in the middle there, and we want to try and keep that.
All
That's
right,
awesome.
that's awesome. Yeah.
If I might ask a question, like, this isn't more of a when question, but a what question. So I've noticed, as many probably have, that there is a new express car in development. And one question I've thought about is how will passengers and mail, if this is known, fit into what already exists?
It's going to be interesting, and a lot of people have that question, specifically towards the map, right? Like, where are we going to shove towns in the existing map? So it's kind of a tough thing. Like, I built my yard right there, and now there's a town in the middle of it. That's not going to work. We're either going to, like, mark out zones and be like, hey, you're going to have to clear this zone on this map if we're going to do it on the first map, or if we'll wait to the second map, still remains to be seen. But if we do stick with the first map to add passengers, we'll mark out where the towns are going to be, or we'll put them in places that most people haven't built track to. Maybe, the canyon up in the northwestern corner of the map, stick something up there. That'd be fun. Anyway, try and do that sort of thing. And then as far as how the operational work, I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts we've had on it. And it's going to come down to what is realistic to implement in the game. So we'll probably start with a more basic system to start with, where it's kind of like people are a commodity that need to be moved, and there's supply and demand at towns or at industries, and people have a specific location they want to go, and if you can get them closer to it at one of your stations, they'll want to go to that station, and then you pick them up and take them that way, and mail will be kind of the same thing. I've got mail from town A that's got to go to town B. Your rail line gets close to town B, so okay, well, we'll take it there. But if you can take it closer, it'll be worth more money. And if you could do it fast, hey, it'll be worth more money yet. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
Great.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I have a question about the community in general. More like workshop type things. Will there ever be a Railroads Online workshop? And do you have an idea of what would be allowed to be made in it?
Yes, eventually. So we do plan to include workshop support, but it's not a trivial thing to create. And we're still, working on the core of the game so much that getting mod support and then dealing with the fallout of mod support of people downloading mods, not realizing that, it wasn't something we created, and then having bug reports related to it while we're trying to sift through everything else. It's kind of a down the road thing if you can follow that. So, we'll have it later, but I mean, any kind of asset that would be in the game, we want to have people be able to make for workshops. So locomotives, cars, track, switches, possibly industries if it can work out. Obviously, people have figured out how to move around the industries, but specifically load, unload, and cargo types might get a little strange because if you want to believe the stupidest bugs we've ever had related to loaded cargo having weird hitboxes. Yeah, load rails onto your train and then it accidentally throws the rest of the train into the sky. That was an interesting day on the dev branch. But so, we want to have those kinds of options out there because, I mean, the whole reason QMA picked the title Railroads Online was so that, hey, we want to focus on the 3-foot narrow gauge because it's an underrepresented market. We think we can get a good catalog of pretty much everything that was out there. And give everyone something that fits their desired niche, be it Rio Grande, be it White Pass, East Broad Top, Tweetsy, something like that. But we want to make the game open to different things down the road, because I mean, that's the most common thing we hear is people want British locomotives. They want American standard gauge. They want Cape gauge. They want Australian locomotives. They want this narrow gauge. Everyone has a favorite locomotive and railroad. But, we just can't do it all for us. So, give the mod support so that you can have 2-foot gauge. You could have Brunel broad gauge if you want. You could have standard gauge, and let the modders take care of that stuff. And it really becomes Railroads Online, any railroad. So that was kind of the whole reasoning behind the name of the game, because that's a core belief is we want mod support so that you can end up with the railroad that you want to create down the line. And we're just going to provide the vessel for it. But, it'll take a while to get there.
So are we placing bets on how when the mod support does come out, how soon it will be before someone adds the that locomotive?
Big boy.
No,
Big boy
big
won.
There's actually already been a big boy in the game.
What?
Did you guys miss out on that?
Oh no, I saw it. The Georgetown Loop thing.
No. There's been a big boy in Railroads Online.
Wait, what?
You'll have to scour through the screenshots. I'll have to see if I can dig out the picture. But modeler Turble, who's working on the express car, had some good friends of his, and it was too late in the day to make the April Fool's cutoff for when we did the silly tech tree. But they were actually able to port someone's kind of I don't know if it was a low quality model or a low quality render or what it was from, but they were able to import a big boy into Railroads Online, and it just sat there, and it only looked good from one angle, and it didn't quite fit on the track, and it did not blend in with anything else, but it was physically in the game, and you were running trains past it. It wouldn't move. It wasn't like it was a locomotive, but it sat there and was a big boy, and it was in the game. So there's pictures. There is evidence.
I'm scrolling through the chats to find this.
If you can't find it, I'll look it up later. I've got it in my DMs somewhere.
Definitely gonna need that.
That is amazing. Trumpet, Sprody, this will be your time to ask any outstanding questions you want to ask.
So I have a few member questions that I've been getting sent during this whole thing. If you have any questions before we move on to them.
Well, here's kind of a strange question that I just came up with now. So I noticed the 0660 on the tech tree. I watched the video on it, and you mentioned that it was meter gauge and not 3 foot. What is the cutoff for considering a locomotive for the game? If because I think you said like it was close enough that it was like you could just kind of squish the wheels together and make it work, you know. Because I know there's a lot of really cool Brazilian engines that are meter gauge, but you know, they're not 3 foot, so they're not going into the game, or you know, that sort of thing. So I'm just curious, like, what the thought when picking a locomotive, what is your thought process?
All right. It's bad. It is bad form to do this as a community manager, but I'm going to send the bus. Here comes the bus. And the bus runs over Armagon. Sorry, Armagon. I threw him under the bus.
Oh, we need him for an interview next week.
Oh,
He didn't realize it was meter gauge when we added it to the tree, and it was already on the tree when it was pointed out it was meter gauge. We thought it was 36 inch. That's the only reason it's on the tree, and it was already put on there, so it was like, okay, well, we already put it on there, and there's several people that were excited to see a locomotive from Puerto Rico, so it was kind of like, okay, we put it on there, we don't want to remove it, we don't want to be rude, and yeah, at the end of the day, meter gauge to 3 foot's not that big of a thing, so it's kind of a special exception. Yes, there's a lot of cool stuff in Brazil, but the tech tree is pretty much done at this point. We did add a V6, and we were hinting at taking suggestions earlier this week, but Armagon has sent me the final tech tree V6. I mean, I don't want to say that we won't add anything else because we may always sneak a fun extra in there just as a secret or something like that. But the tech tree's pretty finalized. We're not going to be adding anything else. Yes, it'd be cool to have more of the meter gauge guys, but that's the reason why the one meter gauge guy ended up on there. It was unintended originally, and then we felt bad about removing it. And it does fit a nice gap as an itty bitty little articulated locomotive to get you going early. So it fit a kind of the right role. Whereas a lot of the other stuff, like if we were to search for meter gauge, it's going to be kind of duplicate to what we have, and there's so much that fits this driver size, this tractive effort, this progression in the tree elsewhere already. Like it just doesn't make sense to try and add anything else. So that's kind of why.
So we have Armagon next Friday, I think, for a Q&A.
Yes.
So tell him to throw the bus at me too. He's got to get me back.
We will make sure the bus throwing continues, and we will also grill him on that, I think.
Well, don't be too mean to the poor lad. He had to research 100+ locomotives. So, okay, he made one error in 100 locomotives. Guess what? That's still more than an A+ by far, so.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
Right, member questions.
Yes, we've got a couple of member questions coming. If you do have any quick fire member questions, do send them my way. Don't send me absolutely huge ones though, because it'll take me forever to get through them. Okay, so we've got two that are relating to the maps. Is there going to be any user-created maps, or is that going to be the just the workshop side of things? So will users be able to create their own maps essentially?
So, I mean, it's going to be the challenge of the implementing of the logic on the back end that makes maps work. I don't doubt that we'll probably be able to make that be a workshop supportable thing. The issue of it is that making maps for the game is actually pretty straightforward in the Unreal Engine editor. I've actually done it myself. It's really not that hard. And if it's free to download, so anyone can do that. But then the issues come in with tree placement and industry placement, and then the tree removal schema, because the way that works to not induce a massive amount of FPS loss. And then as we get more assets that are removable or keep, able to be kept on the map and stuff like that, it's just going to get kind of involved. So it's going to be hard to say. I'm assuming that people will figure out how to get their own maps in there one way or another. We do want to be able to support it. It's just kind of early to say if it'll be possible or not. I'm assuming that Workshop will probably make it possible, though. Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
We'll see. Lovely. We've got a really long one, actually, here, just as I said that. Okay, so I've been told that diesel locomotives will eventually be a thing in Railroads Online. Given the fictional 2882, I'm curious if they would consider being an aborted proposal that I believe was being looked at into by Duragan, to convert a reckoned Union Pacific low noise GP20 to run on 3-foot narrow gauge.
Oh,
The
Jesus.
rebuild. Wow, this I'm not even halfway through yet. The rebuild would have included new 6-axle trucks, fuel tank, and pilots. But from the walkway up, it would have mostly unchanged. This was being considered at least 10 years before the White Pass DL535s arrived in Durango. Have I got to the question yet? The the conversation from standard gauge 280 to what became the K37 served as partial inspiration for those concepts, including the fact that loco width is normally the same as what is found in the K36 37s. Such a concept would have only operated on the DNS due to lack of tunnels, as it would be too tall for this. This is a fact. This too tall for the found of the C&T. Is this narrow gauge conversation something that might be considered in game?
That word's conversion, not conversation.
The funny thing is, I know precisely what they're talking about. The Durango and Silverton ordered from Motive Power Enterprises, I think, 2 locomotives that are, I believe, lettered the Durango and Silverton 1201 and 1202, or 1202 and 1203, something like that. And they look like a full car body width. They look like someone took an F40 PH and just stuck it on itty bitty trucks. But I don't think they're even going to run at the Durango and Silverton because the way that they're constructed was so poor that the FRA has taken so many exceptions to them that it will be surprising if wheels ever turn on them. We'll see. That's been a big logistical headache for those poor guys down at the DNS. But that the primary purpose of the game is for the historical side of things. Like we tentatively said that the end of the game era would be like mid 1960s, like the end of the Denver and Rio Grande Western's primary freight operations, because we're trying to simulate common carrier narrow gauge railroads. So as far as like base game stuff, those wacko things will probably not be there because they're really recent and they don't even work. But that said, there have been examples of similar things done, and I know we just said no meter gauge, but there's been like meter gauge 4-axle SD40 conversions that have happened back in the day. And I don't know if we'll have them or not. We haven't really even started the conversation on diesel locomotives. All we've really said is it's going to be a pretty limited amount, and it's going to be a small amount just because there weren't really that many, and most of them are like center cab switchers or gas mechanical or diesel mechanicals. So that's probably more in line with what we're going to have, rather than modern fantasy stuff. But if it falls in the right era, it's readily available as far as plans go, and we can make models of it. We would consider stuff, but I think even the DL535s are relatively new compared to most of what we're thinking for the tech tree, because we're trying to do the golden age of narrow gauge railroading, really. So we'll see. Again, I don't know, but definitely no. I will confidently say no about those specific DNS prototypes.
And if I could add to that real quick, one of the draws to this game for me is being able to see things that I can't see anymore, or things that in my life I'm probably never going to lay eyes on, but I can interact with. Like with museum stuff, I could, if I wanted to, I could hop on a plane and fly out to the Durango and Silverton and see narrow gauge diesels and stuff, and all the other stuff they have here. I mean, of course, I'd also want to see, the K-class Mikados in the game and all that. But it's like that's one of the things I love about this game is it is the era that it's set in and the setting that it's set in. Just like, ticks all the boxes for me.
Next question. I think I've just got one more after this one. Will there be any Easter eggs, such as a sneaky kitsune, for example?
There will be Easter eggs. I won't tell you what they are because they're Easter eggs.
And Easter's already passed, so
It has already passed. There actually already is one in the game that some people from the olden days in American Railroads, Summit River and Pine Valley know about, but not everyone knows about it. So I don't know. Maybe explore the character options when you're buying a locomotive. You'll find something funny.
Get looking, everyone. Get looking.
Oh, I know what it is.
Is there going to be any dynamic boiler pressure, i.e., if you drive too fast with the setting of Johnston bar and regulator, the boiler pressure sinks?
Yes, yeah, no, that's what we were talking about earlier. Was getting a more accurate steam sim. Yeah, and obviously that's going to be again on a slider for realistic versus I just want to drive the train. And, we want to get accurate steam usage and steam generation modeled. So you got to have the right draft, the right amount of fire to make the right amount of steam for what you're doing. And yeah, you're ultimately going to then be limited in speed by how much steam you can produce and how fast the valves can travel back and forth. So, that's where we want to get with the game. But it'll be a little bit down the road, hopefully, within maybe 6 months.
all right.
Cool.
I just received one more member question. We have talked about possible coal burning and oil burning engines coming to the game. With wood burning engines, we have our firewood depots to get more fuel. How would those fuel refuelings work?
Well,
If we know.
it's pretty simple. I mean, it'll be what you really had. You'll have either a coal dock where you have coal like a firewood depot, and you could deliver coal to it. And back in the day, they were shoveled out, shoveled in, because Lord, that sounds like a fun job, doesn't it? You'll have those, and you also have coal tipples at some point for larger installations, like the one that's in Chama, New Mexico, for coal locomotives. And we do want to make it so that you don't get stuck, like you don't have to deliver coal right away to those places. Like, we don't want people to end up with no firewood or no coal for their locomotives. So you'll always be able to like purchase some from the freight depot should you be out, that kind of thing. And then you can refill your coal docks and tipples as need be. And then with oil burning locomotives, you'll either have a stationary tank or you'll have a tank car that you can fill with fuel oil and park it wherever you need to, and then transload from there to your tender. So that's what we're planning on.
All right, that sounds awesome. Are there any more member questions you two have received, or can I move on?
I have one final member question. Will we get any bulk firewood loaders or some type of semi-upgrade to this depot?
So what, you don't like stacking 1,000 pieces of firewood in the Class 70 tender like you have to do the real thing? What? Come on, it's not Zen? Yeah, no, we're planning on doing something basically that looks like you dump a stick of cordwood onto into the tender like with a crane, and it just loads 400 pieces at a time or 100 pieces at a time. That'll be a thing that comes too.
And I hear the angel choir singing out hallelujah.
Right. Yeah, because if we made it so that you had to burn the correct amount of wood and you had to pitch logs constantly as you're slogging up a 3% grade, and then still made it so that you had to load them even like that. I mean, yes, it's really that painful in real life, but the games are supposed to be fun. There are some things that you shouldn't simulate. And manually stacking the firewood in the tender, nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that on the real thing or in the video game.
Also, side note, someone just sent me a picture of that diesel we were just talking about. Oh boy.
It's a whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's interesting for sure.
All right, Hyce, I got to ask you one question. Are you ready
This is a good one.
for your rapid fire questions?
Oh lordy. Okay.
I only have 5 of them, but they're going to come quick, all right? favorite song on the Railroad Online's soundtrack?
Oh God, making me choose from my children. In volume 1, that's in the game.
Yes.
It's probably the song "Trains on Time" because when I came up with it, it felt like it was like an old Americana piece by the way I wrote the melody, but it was something that I wrote, so it feels like an old song, but I wrote it, and I'm very proud of that. And it's got some really good dobro and guitar solos in it too. So that one.
Will there ever be a song with the golden voice of Hyce on the Railroad Online soundtrack?
God, no. For multiple reasons. One, I've always likened myself to a background singer, not a primary vocal singer. But I've said in many times in many things about the soundtrack, the point of the soundtrack is to sound good and draw you into the game. And me going, woo, is going to take you right out of the game, and you're going to want to come to my house and strangle me. And so you're not going to want that in the game, so it's not going to be in the game.
Right. Favorite fast food joint?
Probably Wendy's. I am a sucker. They have got great chicken, and their burgers are pretty good. If we're talking like straight fast food, if we're going bougie fast food, I love Five Guys. Five Guys burgers. and
Yes.
fries.
Burger and fries.
Makes me very happy on a primal level.
Right. Do you have any shows that you're currently binge watching?
Did you listen to my resume of things that I'm doing? You think I watch TV? Good God. Shoot. No, I don't think I've. The last TV show I watched, and we still haven't finished the whole season. I last watched Letterkenny. We watched all of it about a year ago, and then they had that new season come out around Christmas time, and we watched all of the episodes except the last one, and then they had like one weird one-off episode come out like 2 months ago, and we still haven't finished it because guess what? There's no time.
Yeah, that's a Texas size 10-4, little buddy. So we all know you have magnificent hair. What's your best hair tip?
My best hair tip. I've got two, and they're slightly different, but they're both best in different ways, I guess. One, men, stop using the 17-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, body wash, transmission fluid, motor oil, degreaser, combo milkshake stuff that you can buy in the store that's branded men's stuff for men, for manliness. That stuff is crap. Buy some real, nice hair products. Talk to a woman in your life or someone that knows more about these things, and get some quality hair product, and you will be surprised at how nice your hair is. And don't wash it every day. Wash it every other at most and when it needs it, and take care of it. And to be vulnerable and teach you people about important things, should you experience the symptoms of male pattern baldness, as I did as a young lad about 4 or 5 years ago, they make medication for that now, and it works very well. As you can stare at my head, and I have lots of hair, and I have not gone bald, despite my hairline disappearing rapidly upon turning about 19. So, yeah. Do some research if you're into that thing. Consult your doctor. I'm not your doctor, but, know that there are solutions out there if you are vain and like your rock and roll haircut like me.
Yeah, I might just send you a private message about that after.
You might not be a doctor, but you sure do prescribe the best medicine in the world, and that is Railroads Online. And we'd like to really thank you for taking time out of such a busy schedule, as we've heard, for being with us and answering our questions and giving us insight for everything. So thank you. It really means a lot to us.
Yes.
You guys have the biggest community in the game that I can tell that is separate from the Railroads Online community itself. So it's always good to come and, get a good audience of people to talk to. So I appreciate the platform and letting me come talk to you guys today.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to wrap this up here. So, from Trumpet, Sprody, and our special guest Hyce, this is Dozer, thanking you for Chattanooga choosing us. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.